Welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
This time, we're exploring Jivanmukti, this idea of liberation while still living.
Yeah.
And we're basing this deep dive on a really interesting article from the Spiritual Seek.
Sounds fascinating.
So by the end of this, hopefully, you have a really solid understanding of what exactly Jivanmukti is,
Okay.
how it's attained, and what it actually looks like in practice.
Right.
The article kicks off with something that I think is pretty universal,
Okay.
which is this idea that everybody really deep down wants to be free from suffering,
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
to experience some kind of lasting happiness, right? It's a pretty fundamental human desire.
It is. And the article connects this to Jivanmukti
Okay.
by saying that true bliss can only be found in the infinite,
Okay.
whereas our sorrows, our suffering, is rooted in this finite world.
So the limitations of the material world.
Exactly. It's about transcending those limitations. And the article is really clear that Jivanmukti is not about becoming something you're not.
Right.
It's not about going to a different place.
Okay.
It's more about realizing that freedom that already exists within you.
Interesting.
It's kind of hidden by our identification with all the finite stuff, our ego, our limited perceptions.
Okay, so then how do we actually experience that freedom, though? How do we get there?
Well, the article talks about two main paths, which are knowledge and meditation.
Right?
And what's interesting is it says knowledge in this context is not just a means to liberation, it is liberation.
So not like learning facts and figures.
No,
Oh,
it's deeper. It's about self-realization,
Oh.
recognizing your true nature
Right.
as this infinite being. But meditation is the tool that helps cultivate this knowledge and experience it.
So they work together.
Yes. The article uses some really vivid imagery to describe the experience of Jivanmukti.
Okay.
It talks about the world no longer being separate from the self. And the Jivanmukta, the liberated being, sees everything as an expression of the divine.
Wow.
There's this beautiful line, the soul merging into the extremely real.
I like that.
And then this analogy of a bubble bursting into the ocean, which I think is really effective.
Yeah.
It really captures that sense of merging into something limitless.
So instead of seeing ourselves as these separate individuals, we start to experience oneness.
That's the essence of it. Now, the article does introduce two specific paths to liberation,
Okay.
Sadyamukti and Kramamukti.
Two paths, same destination.
Yes, ultimately.
Sure.
So Sadyamukti is like immediate liberation. It's like
Okay.
a sudden awakening.
Got it.
Kramamukti is more gradual,
Okay.
a process of purification over time. It's almost
Mhm.
like the difference between, say, a sudden flash of insight and a steady climb up a mountain.
But both get you there.
Exactly. And the article points out both paths are valid and appeal to different people.
Okay, so that brings up a really interesting question, though. If someone has attained Jivanmukti, how do they actually live in the world?
Right.
I mean, do they just withdraw from everything?
That's a common misconception.
Okay.
Jivanmuktas don't necessarily withdraw.
Okay.
They actually act spontaneously, guided by wisdom and compassion,
Okay.
but without being attached to the outcome.
So they're in the world, but not of it.
Precisely. The article describes them going around, laughing, sporting, enjoying, but without clinging to those experiences.
That's a nice image.
They're free to participate fully without the baggage.
Without the anxiety.
Right, the attachments.
That's really interesting. So it's not about running away from the world. It's about changing how you relate to it.
Yes, exactly.
And the article makes it clear that this is possible for anyone, regardless of their background,
Right.
their beliefs,
It's about recognizing who you truly are.
beyond the limitations.
Exactly. It's not something you have to strive for.
It's already there.
Yes. And as we dig deeper into the article, we'll see how this plays out.
I'm curious to hear more. It's described so well. It really makes you want to understand.
It does. And what's great is the article doesn't present it as some distant concept.
Okay.
It actually offers practical insights
Okay.
into how we can cultivate this state of freedom.
That's what makes this topic so relevant for our listeners.
Absolutely.
It's not just a philosophy.
It has real-world application.
And we'll unpack those practical aspects as we continue our deep dive,
Sounds good.
looking at how the principles of Jivanmukti can apply to our everyday thoughts, actions, and relationships.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
The article provides examples of how a Jivanmukta navigates the world, their relationships, their thoughts, their emotions.
Yeah, and it doesn't portray them as being detached or emotionless.
Okay.
They're fully engaged,
They experience it all.
the full spectrum, but they do so from a place of deep inner freedom.
So it's like they figured out how to fully embrace life without all the usual burdens.
Yeah, without the attachment and suffering.
Right. The article actually talks about how they experience joy and sorrow,
Love and loss.
but without getting caught in those extremes.
Yes, they don't cling to the pleasure or resist the pain.
So they're just present.
In each moment.
Without getting lost in those stories our minds create.
Right. And this ability to just be present.
To observe without judgment.
That's key.
So it's not about suppression.
No. Or avoiding life's challenges. It's about changing our relationship to those experiences.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
The article uses the analogy of a mirror.
Okay.
A Jivanmukta is like a clear mirror reflecting everything without distortion.
Interesting.
They experience it all.
But they don't identify with it.
Exactly. They're not defining themselves by their experiences or thoughts or emotions.
They can observe from a place of detachment.
Exactly. And this detachment doesn't mean they're cold or unfeeling.
Right.
The article actually suggests that their freedom allows them to experience even greater depths of love and compassion.
Because they're not held back by all the usual fears?
Right. The insecurities. They can love and connect without needing anything in return.
That's a powerful way to live. The article also talks about how a Jivanmukta approaches their work.
Their actions.
And it suggests they do it with purpose and dedication.
But without being attached to the results.
Right, because their self-worth isn't tied to achievements or failures.
They act from a place of inner alignment, knowing they're contributing just by being who they are.
So it's less about chasing success and more about finding your true purpose.
Exactly. And this sense of purpose isn't limited to any specific field.
Okay.
It can be expressed through any action, no matter how small.
So even everyday tasks.
Washing the dishes.
Take your walk.
It's about bringing that awareness and intention to everything you do.
It sounds like Jivanmukti isn't just for, monk or hermits.
Right.
It's something we can cultivate right now in our everyday lives.
And that's what's so inspiring about it.
It's accessible.
To anyone, regardless of their circumstances.
Okay, so let's dive in. The article goes on to explore the specific qualities and characteristics of a Jivanmukta.
It's a fascinating look at how liberation shows up in their thoughts, words, and actions.
And what's compelling is that it doesn't present Jivanmukti as a fixed state.
A destination.
It's a continuous process.
Of unfolding.
A deepening of understanding and expression.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
And the article gives us some practical guidance on how to start that journey.
Right here, right now.
Exactly. The article gets into some really interesting discussions about this whole idea of a liberated soul actively engaging with the world.
Yeah, it seems like there'd be a lot of debate around how that would actually play out.
Definitely. It brings up some interesting points, like some argue that a liberated soul still perceives the world in its plurality.
Okay.
Meaning the absolute somehow perceives multiplicity.
But wouldn't that contradict the concept of the absolute, of ultimate unity? If everything's one, there wouldn't be separate things to perceive?
Right, that's the point the article makes. Plurality, the idea of separate things, inherently means there's non-being or space between them.
Okay.
And if the self is truly the all, there can't be a non-self within the self.
So essentially, if you're still perceiving separate things, you haven't fully reached liberation.
Exactly. The article also touches upon the idea of duty for the liberated soul.
Okay.
Which some thinkers propose.
Duty. But wouldn't that imply a sense of obligation? And wouldn't that go against the whole idea of freedom that comes with liberation?
That's the question the article explores.
Yeah.
Because if liberation is about transcending limitations, those shoulds and musts, then the concept of duty seems kind of incompatible.
Yeah, like you're imposing limitations on someone who's supposed to be beyond those limitations.
Right. And then there's this idea the article brings up that liberation is somehow dependent on everyone achieving liberation.
Oh, wow. So like a collective enlightenment before any individual can be truly liberated.
Yeah, that's the idea.
But wouldn't that be tough to, actually make happen? Everyone's on their own path, right?
That's exactly what the article dismantles. It points out there's no logical reason why one person's karma or spiritual progress should be tied to the progress of others.
Okay, so this idea of collective liberation being necessary for individual liberation doesn't really hold up.
Precisely. And another argument the article addresses is this idea that liberation shouldn't mean becoming unworldly.
Okay.
That the Upanishads, the source of a lot of these ideas, don't advocate for complete detachment.
I can see why that perspective would appeal to some. It makes it more relatable, like you can still be in the world and be liberated.
Right, but the article highlights the limitations of using reason alone to understand ultimate reality, especially when it's not guided by direct experience.
Okay.
Our minds tend to cling to what's familiar to the world as we normally perceive it.
So we're trying to fit something infinite into our finite understanding.
Exactly. The article really emphasizes that liberation, by its very nature, involves transcending those limitations, the ego, the separateness that defines our experience.
So to really embrace the world in its entirety, like the concept of liberation suggests, we have to let go of that limited ego-centered view.
Right. The article also debunks this idea of the liberated soul having some special power or rulership in the universe.
It's interesting that some associate power with liberation. Why do you think that is?
Well, the article suggests it might be our tendency to project worldly values onto the concept of liberation. We're so used to these hierarchies and power structures, it's hard to imagine something beyond that.
So we assume that even in ultimate freedom, there's still someone in charge.
Exactly, but the article firmly rejects this,
Okay.
reminding us that ultimate reality, the absolute, is beyond such dualities. A liberated soul doesn't wield power over anything or anyone.
Because they're no longer separate from the source.
Precisely. It's not about controlling things, but about realizing our oneness with everything.
Okay, that makes sense.
And finally, the article concludes by emphasizing that the Jivanmukta is not inferior to the videhamukta,
Okay.
who achieves liberation after the death of the physical body.
So both paths lead to the same state of freedom, whether it's realized while embodied or after death.
That's right. The difference is only from the perspective of an outside observer. From the liberated being's perspective, there's no distinction.
That's a good point. It really highlights that liberation is about a state of consciousness, not a physical state or a specific place we go to.
Absolutely. And that state of consciousness is available to anyone.
Who's willing to put in the work?
Exactly. That's what makes this whole concept of Jivanmukti so powerful. It's a living invitation to explore our own potential.
To see the world in a new way.
And how can we actually start to cultivate this Jivanmukti perspective? The article offers some practical suggestions.
Okay, like what?
One key practice it emphasizes is self-inquiry,
Okay.
really examining our beliefs and assumptions about ourselves and the world.
So like questioning the stories we tell ourselves, the limitations we've bought into.
Right. And it's not about harsh self-critique.
Okay.
It's more about cultivating a gentle curiosity, a willingness to see things from a different perspective.
Being open to the possibility that there might be another way to experience reality. One that's free from fear, doubt, and all that.
That's the heart of it. The article also talks about the importance of meditation
Okay.
as a way to quiet the mind, connect with that deeper sense of self.
So it's not just about relaxation or stress reduction.
No, it's about something much deeper. Cultivating a direct experience of our true nature.
That boundless awareness.
Exactly. It's already there. And as we practice, that freedom becomes less of an abstract concept and more of a lived reality.
And the limitations start to fall away.
Right. And the article emphasizes that this is a gradual process. It's not about forcing ourselves to be free
Okay.
or trying to achieve some perfect state. It's about being patient, allowing it to unfold naturally.
Embracing the journey.
Exactly. And as we continue exploring this concept, we'll see how this journey shows up in our relationships, our work, even in how we see the world.
It really feels like this whole idea of Jivanmukti kind of shakes up how we think about freedom and happiness and even reality itself.
It does. The article talks about how much of our suffering comes from clinging to a limited sense of self.
This idea that we're all separate individuals.
Yeah, constantly trying to get what we want and avoid what we don't want.
So this sense of separation is an illusion.
That's the main idea. And it's not just an intellectual understanding. It's a real shift in how you experience things.
So how does that shift happen? I mean, the article talks about knowledge and meditation.
Well, the knowledge isn't about collecting facts or information. It's more about recognizing your true nature as being one with everything.
Okay.
And meditation helps you cultivate that recognition, experience it directly.
So you're not just thinking about it, you're actually feeling it.
Yeah, and the more you understand it and practice, this oneness starts to affect everything in your life.
It's not just during meditation then.
No, it's like it becomes how you see the world.
That makes me think about suffering. I mean, if a Jivanmukta has realized this unity, do they still experience pain and sorrow?
That's a really good question, and the article tackles it head on. It doesn't say they're immune to difficult emotions.
So they still feel it all?
Yeah, they experience the full range: pain, grief, loss, all of it.
So it's not about becoming emotionless.
No, the difference is they experience these emotions without being so attached to them or resisting them.
So they don't get caught up in all the stories and drama.
Right. The article uses the analogy of a wave on the ocean.
Okay.
The wave rises and falls, but the ocean is always there, vast and calm.
So a Jivanmukta experiences the waves of emotion.
But their core being is still anchored in that deeper sense of peace.
It's about finding that stillness within.
Even when everything around you is chaotic, and this inner stillness, it allows them to react to challenges with more wisdom and compassion.
Because they're not coming from a place of fear.
Right. Or limitation. They're acting from a place of understanding, love even.
Makes me think about how a Jivanmukta relates to other people.
That connection to everything, it changes how they interact.
In what way?
Well, the article highlights how Jivanmukta sees the divine in everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah, no judgment, no comparing.
Just acceptance.
And understanding.
So they're seeing past all the surface stuff.
The roles we play, the personalities we project.
And recognizing that connection we all share.
And that creates a strong sense of compassion, allows them to love and serve without expecting anything in return.
That's a really beautiful way to approach relationships.
It is. And it's not limited to close friends or family. It extends to everyone.
Even people who might be considered enemies.
Yeah, it's a huge shift in perspective.
To see that spark of the divine in everyone, even the people who cause us pain.
Right. And it doesn't mean condoning bad actions or ignoring injustice.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that shared humanity, that connection beneath it all.
So it's more about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah, the Jivanmukta doesn't get caught up in good or bad, right or wrong.
They see it all as part of something larger.
A divine unfolding. It's like they've gone beyond judgment and are experiencing the world from this place of pure awareness.
It sounds almost transcendent.
And here's the thing, the article is very clear. This state of awareness, this Jivanmukti, it's not some distant goal or something only a few people can achieve.
So we all have the potential.
It's within each of us.
Right.
And it gives some practical guidance on how to cultivate it, how to start changing our perspective.
And experience the world through that lens of Jivanmukti.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive. What really sticks with me is that Jivanmukti isn't about running away from the world.
Or becoming some kind of superhuman.
It's about transforming how we relate to everything. The world, ourselves, other people.
That's a great way to put it. And the article does a fantastic job of showing how practical these principles are.
It's not just a theory. It's something you can actually live.
And then bring more peace and joy to your life.
To our listeners, I encourage you to think about what resonated with you today. How can you bring some of these ideas into your own life? It doesn't have to be a huge change. Even small steps matter. The journey to liberation, it starts at that first step. Thanks for joining us.